probably they're not. Most of you wasn't even here. Probably most of you don't even know this. There's one thing I'll never forget. The first sound system this church ever had, about 32 years ago, I put it in. Even if you was here, you probably forgot about it, but I never will. It was really. I thought about it really a little while ago while we was driving down this morning. It was about 32, 33, 34 years, sometime like that. First sound that my pastor came and run a revival here, and that week we decided that we'd try to put in a sound system. Just really a blessing. Let me say the Lord has been good to us. We went to Montana. We was there for 30-some years on the Crow Reservation. About 2 years ago, the Lord just really started dealing with me that to try to maybe turn that work over to somebody else. And there are reservations all up and down the West Coast, all the way from Mexico to Canada, California, Arizona, New Mexico, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. That a lot of missionaries are on them now, but they have nobody to come and fill in for them. And you just don't call down the road, or you don't pick somebody out of the congregation to fill in for you. You just stay there. And this state will, you might say, let me say this. Let me throw this in here real quick. In a way, I'd like to really apologize to the churches because we haven't been around them in so long. But the Lord didn't send me the mission field to stay here. He didn't call me the mission field to stay in western North Carolina, where we're originally from. He called us to go and be faithful. And but we're thankful this church and other churches. They've been probably churches down in Florida, well, one church in Florida and 2 or 3 in Georgia that we hadn't been to in nearly 30 years. And we usually come into western North Carolina, and then something happens out west, and we have to turn around and go back, or just in a few days or something. And it'd been all them churches down there, they'd been faithful, but we just hadn't been there. And I told Vicki this time, I said, when we leave here, we're going to Florida. And then if I have to cancel somewhere else, we'll do that. But I said, I'm going to catch some churches, try my best to catch some churches that hadn't been around. So, but it's a blessing to be here. Now we do travel all the time. I kind of joke, and don't get me wrong what I'm going to say. The Lord takes care of us. I mean, He does. He takes care of us. He just sometimes I just wonder why that. I've kind of joked about it. It seems like the Lord always provides for anything we need. He keeps us going. But it seems like we can't get really no higher than that in financial. And I jokingly said one time, I said, I don't think the Lord He don't trust me with money. Well, the other day we thought we was going to kind of have May kind of open, and we'd be able to kind of rest just a little. Well, just 3 or 4 days ago, I got a call from a missionary in southern Arizona that wants us to come and fill in for him in May. I said, well, the Lord didn't trust me in money, now He don't trust me with time. So, but I'm thankful the Lord keeps us busy. You know, it's just such a blessing. I love going in on reservations. The Lord is not saying nothing good about us, but the Lord has just really blessed myself and Vicki on going in on reservations. I mean, there are people right now, just between us, that cannot go in on the reservation. They just won't make it off. But we've never had a minute's problem. The Lord just has really blessed us. And we just thank you for all your support, your prayers, and we can just stay out there. And I told them, they've been quite a few. I will say this right quick. You can keep praying, but Vicky's knees is getting so bad here probably a couple of years ago, she just about have to hold on to something to keep from falling. Didn't know really what we was going to do. We know that if she had to have surgery, that it would really hurt the ministry and be hard to keep the ministry going. She had knee replacements. We just happened to be in Southern California, just right across from the Mexican border. And there was a missionary said, looked at Dickie and said, if you want to go down to Mexico, I believe there's a doctor down there that can help you. And so we all set it up. You've seen her this morning. She's walking in pretty good. She's a little slow getting up sometimes, but after she gets to going, she's pretty good. And but the Lord has really been good to us in every way. I had cancer, found cancer 6 months ago. We done surgery. It's gone. It hasn't come back. Found a little spot of cancer in my lung, and they said that they didn't want to do nothing until it started growing or something happened. Well, about every 3 months I'd have it checked, and it would stayed the same. And then the last 2 times that I went, it shrunk. No treatments, no nothing. And the Lord's good to us. So if you would, we're leaving here, going straight to Montana after we leave here. We'll be leaving here on Monday the 11th, and we'll be heading to Montana then. I'll be going back to the doctor then. Just pray that everything will go good. We sure appreciate it. I want to look at something this morning. I had 2 or 3 different things I was wanting to look at, but if you want to, you can turn to Genesis chapter 18. Genesis chapter 18. And I want to bring some things out. I've seen that the church was really going through some heartaches and trials, and the song that was sung there just a few minutes ago I'll bring out some things in it. But in Genesis chapter 18, verse 9. Genesis 18, verse 9. And they said unto him, where is Sarah thy wife? And he said, behold, in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return unto thee accordingly to the time of life, and lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of woman. Listen to this right here. This ain't got nothing to do with the message, but therefore Sarah laughed within herself. I just want to stop there for just a few minutes and just look at something. I really believe she kind of just laughed within her mind. I believe she just kind of laughed within her heart, and it wasn't really maybe a laugh that came out. But the Lord heard it. And let me just kind of throw this in. Like I said, this ain't nothing to do with the message, but I believe there are a lot of times there are things goes through our mind that's not good, and we think nobody else around us knows it or anything, but the Lord knows it. And I really believe, I don't believe Sarah just really laughed out loud here, but the Lord still heard her laughing within her mind. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, for I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also. And the Lord said unto Abraham, wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I of a surety bear a child which am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? Now I want to just turn on over to Jeremiah right quick. Jeremiah chapter 32. Jeremiah chapter 32 and verse 17. Ah, Lord God, behold, thou hast made the heaven and the earth by thy great power and stretched out arm, and there is nothing too hard for thee. Now let me just say this. I'm going to look at just a few things this morning. Won't be too long. But this morning the church is going through a lot of trials and different deaths and different things is going on, different sickness, different things was wanting us to pray about. The Lord made some promises to us. And He's never made a promise that He has to break. He's never made a promise that He will break. You know, there are a lot of times that there are times that I've told people, like even on a Sunday, that I've said, listen, I'll see you in the morning. I'll meet you in the morning in a certain place, or we'll do this. But there are a lot of times I've had to call them up, or there are a lot of times I've had to go by and say, listen, I just cannot keep that promise. But let me tell you something. All the promises in this Word of God, that the Lord said He'd be there. I don't know. I don't really know about this, but I was told by some people that there was over 3,000 promises in the Word of God, and they may be. I don't really know. But let me tell you this. There's not a one you can go to the bank on a promise that the Lord has. And you may be going through a trial today, and you may be hurting, but the Lord said He would be there with you. He'll be there for you. And I don't really care. I don't care how hard it is. You know, let me just say this. I preach all the time and try to encourage the native people. Hey, if you serve God and you stay faithful to God, the Lord will take care of you. But I'm going to just have to tell you sometimes. Let me throw this in. I want you to understand what I'm saying now. I believe in faith. You have to have faith to be saved. You need faith to get when you're praying. Let me just tell you something. You may not be like me. You may be spiritual in me. But there are a lot of times that I've asked God for something. And I didn't really, in the back of my mind, I said, now Lord, really, I don't believe you're going to answer this, but here it is. Have you ever been that way? So I said that to say this. I believe in faith. Don't get me wrong. You've got to have faith. You've got to have faith to be saved. You've got to put faith in the Lord to be saved. But the Lord answers a lot of prayers that the faith ain't really there. The Lord has been so good to us. I mean, they've been things go on in the last 30 years, and we've needed something, and and like I said, they've really honestly been times that I went and prayed, Lord, we need this. Lord, we need to see this happen. And I'd get up off my knees sometimes just wondering, well, I don't know if He'll do this or not, but He still has. I thank God that He's made promises to us that He will never have to break. He never will break. Something else I want to look at. There is no prayer too hard for God. Let's look at 2 Chronicles. 2 Chronicles. 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. Now, there's been a lot of times I've used this on reservations. A lot of reservations, just about all of them, they need their land healed. Now it ain't just a reservation. United States, the whole United States needs to be healed. And again, the Lord never said nothing, never made a promise that He will not keep. Everybody agrees with me? Well, that kind of tells me that a lot of people which are called by His name is not really His chosen people. It's not saved. Because there's too much going on. It kind of tells me that and it says, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Right now, our land is not being healed. Right now, there are reservations all over this country, especially the western reservations, that is not being healed. You know why? Because if my people, which are called by my name. That's a promise. And God don't break no promise. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Let me just say this morning. No matter what you're going through this morning, if you will look at this verse right here and really take it to heart and really mean it, the Lord will take care. Now, I didn't say that He's going to take all the trials away from you. He ain't going to take all the problems away from you. We go through trials every day. But listen, the Lord will be there for you. And let me just say this, and it's not here about I don't know 35 years ago. We were still right before we went to mission field. I got a call at work one day, and my sister had called Vicki and said, my mom had called my sister, and my sister called Vicki and said, Mom wants Ronnie to come home, come up to her house. Said, my dad has not showed up at the house when my mom thought he ought to. Well, we left there, and I left. We come by and picked up Vicki. We went over to my mom's house to pull in her driveway. Just as I pulled into the driveway, the highway patrol pulled in beside me. He knowed me good. He knowed my dad. In fact, my dad taught his Sunday school class. He noticed real good. Pulled up beside me, and he done the highway patrol thing, you know. He slapped Dad's wallet open, and he said, "This is your dad, ain't it?" And I said, "Yeah." He told me, he said he must have had a heart attack or something, but he left the road and hit a big old oak tree. He didn't make it. We went up there, I don't know, we had to go up there to the hospital that night, release that sign, hadn't released. They said everything from here down was crushed. He was in the front of his car, in the back of the front seat, they was 38 inches. And he was in it. And they said everything from here down was crushed. First thing out of my mom's mouth. I'm just telling you this. The Lord can be with you no matter what you're going through. And you may be here this morning, and you may be a hurting, and probably are. But listen, boy, if you just put the trust in the Lord, He can give you peace through the tryingest time you've ever had. And my mom, the first thing out of her mouth when the doctor told us that, she said, if he's don't look like him, I don't want us to never see him. We was having a revival at our church. This is on a Friday. No, it's on a Friday. We was having a revival at our home church. So we left the hospital. I took my mom home. My sisters was there with her. Me and Dickie went on over to the church, and we was there at the church for a little while through the prayer time, and then we left and went back over to my mom's. And then on Sunday morning, we went to church, and I had to go right after church to the funeral home to see if it was going to be where that my mom wanted to see him. I mean, that's going to be hard if I had to go tell my mom, you don't see him. And I prayed. Let me just throw this in. This ain't got nothing really to do with it. But it's for somewhere in the Bible, I don't know where, but somewhere in the Bible it says that if somebody dies in your family, or you have a baby, you can't go to church for 6 months. It says that in the Bible somewhere. Because there are a lot of church members this morning that won't go to church for 6 months after somebody dies. And they have a baby and they won't go to church for 6 months. Dickie's sister had twins a few years back. couldn't take them twins to church. They might catch something, but she could drag them all over Walmart. Ain't that right, Vicky? That's Vicky's sister, so, I'm not just preaching to you. I'm just saying, if you can drag them kids all over Walmart, take them to church. But anyway, that's that side thing. But anyway, I went in there that morning, right after church. We was going to have visitation, 2 o'clock or something, at the funeral home. I walked in there, walked back in there, and I didn't know what I was going to say. I told Vicky, I said, you stay out here. I told the undertaker, I said, stay out here. I walked back in there. I walked up to that coffin. There laid my dad. I mean, you couldn't tell nothing was going to happen. I mean, they had him fixed up perfect. My dad, after he got way up in years, up in his 80s there, we could go over to his house and he'd be sitting there in his recliner. He'd have his glasses on, his Bible in his lap, or the Bible would be sitting here, and his glasses laying on top of the Bible. And we'd go in. He had 4 or 5 hairs up here that he tried to cover his head up with. And I'd go in, every once in a while I'd walk up to him and I'd take my hand, scrub his head. He'd say, I'd just mess up them few hairs he had. I'd go in there and I'd scrub that head. He'd say, one of these days this old man's going to whip you. I said all that to say this. My heart was broken when I had to walk in there and look down here. But God gave me enough grace. I want to just reach in there one more time and scrub his head. And go out there and tell the undertaker, you better go back in there and fix him back up, because I done messed him up. I said all that, folks. Let me tell you something. The Lord can take care and give you a peace in your worst trials. I mean, the Lord can put a smile on your face when you ain't got really much to smile about. When you don't have nothing to smile about, the Lord can put a smile on your face. And I just want to, I don't know, I kind of think maybe the Lord wanted me to do this morning with Pastor in there. We was talking a while ago, everybody going through so much stuff and different trials. And probably some of you going through some trials this morning that wasn't even mentioned. But listen, the Lord promised us He would beat our fathers, and He'll never break that promise. He'll never break that promise. Listen, I want to look at something else. There's no place where God can't send revival. I don't care how rough it is. We've had people, even out of my home church, we've had people go out west. They went to reservations. They went to different places. And if the Lord just didn't do something in a few days or a few weeks, you know what? They'd be back sitting. Well, I started to say sitting on the pews of the church. Some of them don't even go back to church. I know missionaries that left, go places, and things didn't just go. And they called me up, or I've seen them. I've heard somebody else say, they said the Lord is just not going to do nothing. Listen, there's no place. If we pray, there's no place that the Lord will not send and can't send revival. He might not do it just on your time, and He might not do it. But listen, I do know there are pastors that the Lord moves to different places. There are missionaries that the Lord moves from different. But I tell you what, just because you're going through a trial, don't mean that you need to go. I was here it's probably quite a few years back. And sometimes I get in trouble the way I preach. But usually I don't really care. But I had a pastor down in Lenore. We was going to be at his church on one Wednesday in Lenore, North Carolina. Going to be at his church on a Wednesday night. He called me up. He said, "Brother," he said, "I've got this couple that's going to go to the Blackfeet Reservation in Montana." And he said, "They're not from my church, but he said, if I can get in here," he said, "I believe really that you could really help them if you and Dickie could come maybe an hour or something before church and just talk to them." I said, "Be fine." He called me back in a few minutes. He said, "They can be here." So we went. Well, we talked for about an hour. I preached. We went on. I'm saying this, we need to stay faithful where the Lord puts us. I don't care if the Lord just puts you in that pew right there. Let the pastor every Sunday or in every service see you in that pew. You don't have to have no title. Just be. I've always said, when they walk by and look at me in a coffin, they might not be able to say that I was much of a singer. They probably won't say that I was much of a preacher. But if they can't say nothing good about me, I hope they can say he was faithful. So I preached, and we went after church. We sat there and talked to that couple. We got in the car, headed down the road. I told Vicky, I said, they'll never make it. They'll never make it on the reservation. Well, 6 months after that, they come to the Blackfeet Reservation. They left there. They was there about 2 or 3 months, and the first 30 below zero and 2 foot of snow overnight came. All of a sudden, the Lord called them to Florida to be a youth director. About the time the sun got up in Florida, got a little warm, all of a sudden the Lord called them back to Kentucky or Virginia. Then things didn't go there just like they wanted. So all of a sudden the Lord called them to Tennessee to pastor. And things didn't go there just like they wanted. And all of a sudden the Lord calls them back to Wyoming to pastor. So, you watch that over and over and over. And I came up with a message. We serve a confused God. He has no idea what He wants us to do. He just sends us, just scatters around here and there. But I got up, they had a big preacher's fellowship for all the missionaries in Montana, one church did. And they called me the first one to come and preach. Well, I got up there and preached, and I told this whole story about this thing. And I said, church, we need to be faithful no matter what the Lord puts you to do. I'm not saying that He'll put you doing the same thing for all your life, but He don't change His mind every few weeks. He just don't do it. Well, I told that whole story and got down, and I went and I sat down, and Dickie, quick as I sat down, Dickie said, "That's him." I said, "No, man." Dickie said, "That's him." And it was him, but he got a good message that day. Listen, you're going to go through heartache. You're going to go through trials, but don't stop serving God. Don't stop serving God. Listen, the Lord ain't going to call everybody in here to be a missionary. He ain't going to call everybody in here to be different positions in the church. He may not call you to do nothing but to come right there and sit right there on that pew and pray for the pastor and pray for the church. That might be all you may be able to do. But just stay faithful. Don't turn just... Let me say this right quick. Every Easter, especially when I was a pastor, and instead of just really preaching an Easter message, which I would preach it, but we need to sit down every once in a while and just open our Bible and just read what the Lord had to go through before He ever got to the cross. Just think about that. The Lord wasn't murdered. He didn't have to go to the cross for us, but He did. And He went through a lot of things through His journey to the cross that He could have said, "Hey, I'm just not going to see this man. I'm not going to see this. Then I want to say, just about this is coming pretty close to the end. There's no person too hard for the Lord to reach. You may have a son, you may have a daughter, you may have you may have a family member. Let me encourage you, don't never stop praying for them. Don't never. They're right now, I know, their mamas and dads already in the grave. They died, not seeing some of their family members, maybe some of their children, get right with God. But they prayed and prayed and prayed till they went to the grave, and now they're serving God. I know preachers right now that stand and preach that their mom and dad prayed for them. They never did get saved. Let me tell you, the Lord answers prayers. We can actually go to the grave. So be faithful. Don't never give up on somebody. You keep praying. I mean, they've been times on the reservation. I've seen some. That it's I don't know. You just sometimes, not that you don't love them, but you just get word that, do I really need to keep praying for them? They're just so weak. But let me assure you, there's nobody that we need to stop praying for. Whether it's your neighbor, whether it's a family member, keep praying. Keep loving them. Let them know. Let me say this too. This is a hospital for sin people, for lost people. This is a hospital. A lot of times, I can take you to churches right now. Everybody wants them to be just so-so before they ever come through them doors. Well, I mean, sometimes I love them native people. They ain't nobody in the church that I didn't love. But boy, there've been times I've been up there preaching, and I've been out, maybe met somebody out on the reservation, wicked as could be. Sometimes they'd come walking through the door about the middle of the message. I just about sometimes want to stop and just shout. Hey, listen, the pastor loves every one of you. But I tell you what, if you really want to see him rejoice, let him see that old sinner come through the door. That's one that he's going to really rejoice about. That's what we're here for. That's what I'm on the reservation for. I ain't going to tell them people they have to be, we had a feller, he was a town drunk. He was the reservation drunk. And probably we was there on that reservation for 10 years before I ever seen him sober. He was a wicked man too. But he got to come to church. Sometimes he'd sit back about 4 or 5 rows back there. He'd come to church, and I could be up there in the pulpit, and I could smell it. I could smell the alcohol. But he sat there and listened to me. He'd come pretty regular. He'd come, never caused no problems. And some people said, well, he shouldn't come to church that way. Well, he don't know enough to sober up to come. And as long as he ain't causing problems, he's welcome. There's one Sunday morning. He was sitting back there, and I was preaching hard. And the people on the reservation, I had a couple of men said that if a visitor come in, he said, now if you're watching Pastor Ron preach, he said it's kind of like watching a tennis match. Sometimes I do a lot of running, a lot of moving. But he got started that morning. I was preaching. I come off the platform, started around. He pulled out a pack of cigarettes. Stuck that cigarette in his mouth. I said, now, Lord, if he likes that thing, I'm going to have to say something. But I said, Lord, just help him. Lord, just help. And I was trying to preach and keep my mind off of that. And I said, if he tries to light it, I'm going to have to say something. And I said, I don't want to run him off. I don't want to upset him. A few minutes, he sat there a few minutes just watching me with that cigarette in his mouth. After a while, he reached up there and got it. Reached it, pulled his pack, put it back in there. Listen, they're things that you don't have to beat down on somebody. You need to let them know they're still loved, no matter what they're involved. You need to let them know. Let me just look at one thing here, right quick. This is going to be the last thing I'm going to look at. This last thing I'm going to look at. I'm going to turn it over to the pastor. Everybody in here probably heard the story of Jonah, right? I mean, if you're just a child, that's about the first thing you ever remember somebody telling you about Jonah. It said, and in the first chapter of Jonah, they went through the storm. They had the mariners scared to death, and they went through all kinds of storms, but they had him scared to death. But listen, in first chapter of Jonah, I'm going to just leave this with you. Then the men feared the Lord exceedingly and offered a sacrifice unto the Lord and made vows. Now, let me say this right quick. Would everybody agree with me that if you're lost and you die, going to hell's hitting bottom? Would everybody agree with me on that? That's hitting bottom. Now, if you're saved and you end up in the fish's belly, that's pretty well hitting bottom. Now listen to this. Then the men feared the Lord exceedingly and offered a sacrifice unto the Lord and made vows. Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Now, listen to this. Then Jonah prayed. All that mess that he was in the first chapter, all that mess he's putting everybody else through, all the trials and storms he's putting everybody else through, he laid over our sleep. He was causing problems to everybody but himself. Agree? But not one time did he pray. Listen to this. This is what I want to say. He prayed after he hit bottom. No praying. I don't really believe. A lot of people say, I'm going to ask the Lord this and I'm going to ask the Lord that. We don't know what we're going to ask him, if we ask him anything or not, but I've thought about it. I don't really believe Jonah would have ever had to went to the fish's belly is when he got on that other ship, going away from God, if he'd have said, Lord, forgive me. Forgive me. Forgive me, Lord, for turning my back on you. I believe the Lord would have forgiven him, got him out of there, and sent him on the land. I don't really believe he'd have had to went to a fish's belly if he'd have just prayed one time and said, Lord, just admitted to what he done wrong and said, Lord, forgive me. I don't believe he'd ever. So I'm saying that this morning. If you're here this morning and you're kind of drifting the wrong way, and you know you ain't where you was at, if you're not where you're at 6 months ago, if you're not where you was at then, or a year ago, or sometime, listen, now's the time to say, Lord, forgive me. This is time to forgive. Because hitting that fish's belly is hitting bottom. You can't go much lower than that if you're saved. But if you're unsaved, hitting bottom would be hell. So listen, praying will get you out of either mess. It'll keep you out of the belly of the fish, or it'll keep you out of hell.